Mic test. 1, 2. Standby crew. 3, 2, 1. Rolling for On Her Side.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to On Her Side. I have with me my guest today, Salma Faruqi. Salma, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah for making the time to join today.
Jazakallah.
So today our topic is parenting specifically with little ones, and I know, mashallah, you're the proud mother of 3 little ones. How have you been finding it?
Alhamdulillah, it's a lot of work. Mashallah, it's a big blessing, but keeps me on my toes.
Yes, and a big responsibility
A big
as well.
responsibility.
Yes, I know. You know, there's so much information out there for new parents. It's literally everywhere you go. People are either giving you advice or sharing their experiences. And then with the advent of social media and technology these days, there's so much information that is accessible to you instantly, right? So you run into the problem, you go online, you check to see what should I be doing, and other than that, there's also so many other educational and informative, sessions out there and information that you can access on how to be a good parent and parenting strategies and things like that. How have you found that to be, or, where do you kind of go when you need information?
Yeah, that's very true. We're surrounded by ideas and suggestions and things that we want to do, whether that's within the Jamaat, whether that's outside of the Jamaat. And for me personally, it's a little bit about my mindset. So I think about what I would like for my children to become, and where I would like them to go, and then from there I go from there. So, for example, I think about the things that Hazuri Anwar guides us. So all 3 of my girls are Waqfat. So thinking about what it means to raise Waqfat and the responsibility that is on my shoulders, and where I would like them to be one day, and how I need to get them there. So
that's what drives you.
Exactly.
That's kind of like your strategy, quote unquote.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, I've read a lot about these parenting strategies that others have, their ideas on how to parent and all of that. And I feel like good parenting, like as you said, is more than just a good strategy. It's deeper than that. I think, like you said, the mindset of the parents, the mindset of the mother, it impacts a lot on how your child grows and develops, and what kind of nature they develop as well, right? So if you have self-confidence, if you're connected to your faith, you're calm, you're patient, etc. Those are the qualities that your child from a very young age is observing and learning to absorb as well, and then exhibits that same way.
Exactly. It's a lot about what you show them, right?
Yeah.
And that's who they will become. And so having that mindset is very, very important. And when we think about it, the example that we set for our children, they're watching us. They're watching our mindset. They're looking at everything we're doing at home, the things we're saying, the things we're not saying, all the things. So it's important, I think, that you set that example, having that mindset, so your children then in the future have a good mindset. So just for example, if I think about the example that I set out for my children at home, when I value getting up at prayer time to offer prayers, as opposed to sitting on the couch and doing something else, scrolling on my phone, for example. So it's very important that we set that mindset, and we show them by example that if I value my salat, I'm going to get up on prayer at the time of prayer, and I'm going to offer my prayers, right? And then showing them that, modeling them for them, that mindset that you have, and how it impacts your day-to-day activities and your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and it's actually, it's that same saying where actions speak louder than words, right? Because they're so young, and even though, yes, they do understand you when you speak, even if they can't speak back, they're still understanding you, and yes, you can explain to them, in your words of how important things are, and how to behave and all of that. But the best way for them to learn is for you to model it, and then they learn to mimic you.
Exactly.
And the other thing too is that you talked about, having a great responsibility. It's about nurturing in them to their potential, right? So every child is different, and you want to, instead of having one strategy that you subscribe to as a parent, I think you want to customize your approach even for each child in your home, right?
Exactly. And I think sometimes we tend to think that, my child A is 2 years old and this child is too little for this or too old for that. And we tend to forget that, we put a number on them based on their age, and we seem to develop these beliefs in our mind. It's back to that mindset piece, right? That they can't do this or they can do that, and but it's looking at look at your child and see where your child takes you, and nurture that potential and guide them and help them to become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I think so. And I think just, you're with all of the information that you're being exposed to in terms of what good parenting is and all of that, alongside that, there's also a whole lot of messages that we're kind of absorbing even subconsciously, and we learn things. For example, you hear about the terrible twos. So when you go out and somebody asks you at the park, how old is your child, and you say, oh, they're 1 year old or 1.5. Oh, well, then you got to watch out for those terrible twos. They're coming, and the fearsome fours, and so there's these terms that have been made up in mainstream society that a parent needs to watch out for this or that, and then they tell you that when this does happen, this is how you should be reacting. These are the timeouts, or these are the types of punishments that you can try out for your child to keep them in line. Otherwise, they're just going to go out of control and things like that. And it's very interesting, talking about psychology, is that we start to believe in those things, right? Because we haven't experienced it yet as new parents, right? So we think, yes, it must be true because everybody knows it to be true. And so as you start to expect it, because you believe in it, you see then whatever you want to see, whatever your brain wants. So even if your child was never going to be a terrible monster at age 2, you are seeing that in them. So the first sign of a tantrum, you're like, oh yes, they're 2 now, and this is what I'd heard. And so now I've got to go and look up those strategies that I need to teach my child some discipline and good behavior and those types of things. And then it just keeps going on and on and on with the milestones that your child hits. You're told these are the things that you must be doing. And it gets to be so much sometimes.
It really does. And that's where you have to really stop and sit back and think about it. And, sometimes we're just on autopilot. We're just parenting, trying to tackle all the things in the day that we need to tackle. But we really need to sit back and think about it. Okay, what is important to me, and how do I need to get my children there? And look around you. I'm sure you'll find lots of great examples of parents. We have them all around us. So look around you. Who can you look up to? You've watched your mother raise you. You've experienced that. And so looking at those examples and learning from them, I think is very important, as opposed to what everybody else around you is
just doing, and this is the best thing to do. And then they have these articles, that you come across, where how to best prepare your child for daycare, how to best prepare your child for their first day in kindergarten. And it's all these strategies and do's and don'ts and tips and tricks, and it's so overwhelming, and you try to implement them in your children, and it doesn't take, and then you get so frustrated and depressed almost, because you're like, oh, my child's not ready. How are they going to go to school and navigate the washroom, or navigate their lunch, or communicate with the teacher, or something like that? And so it's just all of these pressures, that are constantly building up, and you don't know how to sort through them. But you mentioned one thing. You said sometimes you're just on autopilot, right, as a new parent, and we've all been there. We know about the lack of sleep, and then you're just, you're a zombie, and you're just going through your day, and then your child falls asleep for 20 minutes, and you're so excited, you just run around in circles for those 20 minutes thinking about, should I take a shower, should I eat my meal, should I be on my phone, or so we've all been there. But I think a really important lesson for parents, for new parents, is to balance your own needs with your children's.
Very important.
I think especially as mothers, we want to become super moms, and we think that this is our responsibility. We have to take care of this child's needs 100% of the time, in the 100% most best possible way. Of course you should. You are their guardian. But I think that balancing your own needs as a human being leads you to become a healthier parent for your child. And I think that also, if they see that you're also eating your meals, you're also hungry, so you're also eating, it teaches them as well what the family hierarchy is, right? That you're their parent, and that you also have needs, and you will also take care of yourself.
Exactly. Have you ever heard of Self-Care Sunday? it's such a common thing for working professionals to think of Sunday as a day that you take care of yourself to prep for the week ahead. So if you're a working mother, for example, and in your professional life you're seeing this and you're spending the time, you're seeing the people around you spending the time to take care of themselves, to prepare for that week ahead, why are we not doing that at home with our children, right?
Yeah.
We need to take the time to think about how we can prepare ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically to be there for our kids.
Yeah. And I think a large part of that is delegation, which I know sometimes as new parents and new moms, we have a very difficult time doing.
Yeah.
And I think that, one of the things that I kind of fell prey to was this idea of I have to do it all by myself.
Yeah.
This is my responsibility. I've got to take care of this. And so I literally wouldn't delegate even to my husband. I wouldn't let him do anything because I would just automatically think that he doesn't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to do it right. And then the downside of that was twofold. One thing, every time that I needed to go to the doctor or I needed to do something where I had to be away from the baby and I had to delegate to him, he couldn't do anything because he was never given the opportunity to practice, right?
Exactly,
So then I would get even more upset and I would say, oh, see, like no one can help me. It's all on me. I have to do this myself. So that led to a lot of frustration. And then the second thing was that I literally became very isolated.
Yeah.
I became very isolated, especially in those early days when you're not eating, you're not sleeping well, you have this child who, might be going through colic or whatever else is happening. And especially in the evenings, like I just literally used to sometimes feel like crying. I think I was just so depressed. And that's a lesson that I have learned that I want to, sort of convey to everybody out there is that learn to share the responsibilities. It takes a village to raise a child.
Exactly.
Delegate to your partner, delegate to the grandparents are there to support you. So take on that support, right?
Yeah. I think even if you're not offered that support, I think you should reach
for
out
it.
for it. Exactly.
Ask for it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And we have support all around us if you're blessed with a family, parents
Yeah.
nearby. And definitely with the husband, start from day one.
Yes.
He's part of this.
Absolutely. The other thing too, I was thinking about, in terms of the pressures that we feel like we absorb subliminally sometimes as well as new parents from those around us is when we compare our children to other children, when we go to the park and we see other kids doing some other developmental milestones that they've hit that your child hasn't. And then there's people who will say, oh, your child is not potty trained yet, they're still not on solids or they're still taking the bottle. And you take all that pressure and then you translate it on your child because it's like, oh, you become really, really worried that you haven't implemented this particular change yet. So you force it on them sometimes without preparing them, without taking into account, like you said, that customized approach towards each child. What are their strengths? Are they able to take this on or not, right? And so that's something that I learned as well, is when somebody said to me that my daughter is too old to have the bottle. Because they've started to develop the teeth and everything, so they should be drinking their milk from a cup. And I got so worried, I threw out the bottle the same day, like all the bottles, and I got a sippy cup and I put milk in it, I warmed it up, and I'm so happy, oh, now she's gonna, and she didn't. She stopped drinking milk altogether because I never went through that preparation process, that weaning off, right? And I learned it when it was too late, and, it was just, these are the ways that you learn.
Yeah.
So I think that we should also be very careful about not translating those pressures onto a child.
Yeah. It's like when you're in a rush, you have to get somewhere, and your child can sense that you're in a rush, and everything just has to go wrong at that particular moment, and there might be a tantrum, or there might be, they're taking their time, going really slow, and you're like, let's go, we gotta get out,
And they feel that anxiety in you, and
exactly.
especially when you have to go somewhere the next day, that night before, they won't sleep.
Exactly.
And then they'll sleep exactly at the moment when you have to get up.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, exactly. They feel all of that, and they really do have that connection with you, right? So they feed off of your emotions, and if you project an image that is healthy, balanced, etc., then they will begin to feel that way as well.
That pressure piece you mentioned, though, somebody recently shared with me, and it really had me thinking. So, when we receive pressure from outside, it's okay to look at that pressure and sit back and think, okay, is this something that is good for my child that I want to adopt? And then you can also think about it the other way. Does that pressure work for you? So sometimes receiving pressure encourages us to get in the right direction or go in a good direction. But to sit back and think about it, and then maybe that pressure actually helps you, because there are some moms who thrive on that pressure, right? But to think about it, does this work for me? Does this work for my child? Not just to innately, or just to take it all in and just do it. That's it. Because I heard it, I'm going to do it. No. Really sit back, think about it, and then apply it in your life.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valuable lesson, because you're going to be bombarded by all sides. You're going to have your colleagues, if you're working, your neighbors, your social circle, everyone giving you pieces of advice on what should and should not be done for your child. And if you don't filter and sort through it, and really, maybe have a talk with someone too, someone trusted, maybe your own mother, maybe your partner, your husband, discuss it together. Do you think this is a good step that we should be taking, right, for our children? Speaking of elders and leaning on them for support and all of that, I feel like with the the new age parents who are influencers, and we see them on social media and they talk about these do's and don'ts and tips and tricks with their little ones, I feel like it's really important to navigate whether they have before listening to them and before really absorbing and believing that this is what you should be doing. I think it's really important to take a step back and say, well, these parents have little ones. They've learned from their experiences. They're sharing them with us, but their kids haven't grown up yet. So how do they know that their methodology has worked, right? Because they haven't raised their children yet. So they're still kind of in the same boat as you. They're just sharing their opinions and their experiences. Whereas sometimes I feel the older generation, our parents, who have raised us. So we're parents now because of the way that they raised us, and we do our parenting based on our behaviors that we learned when we were growing up. That generation has a lot to offer, and oftentimes I feel like their voices are not heard anymore, right? So if you were to have a problem, you'd maybe want to go to Google to find out, what does the pediatrician say about this, or if it's a psychology issue, what does a psychologist say about this type of behavior, as opposed to maybe turning to your mother-in-law and asking, what should I be doing in this regard?
Yeah, I think it's very... And I'm guilty of this myself. I'll turn to Google a lot quicker than I'll pick up the phone and call someone for support. But it's a very valuable thing that we have, the knowledge that they have, and yes, we can learn from it a lot. And I think we should definitely rely on them more than we trust these outside sources.
Absolutely, because they're tried, tested, and true, right?
Exactly.
So they've gone through that experience.
Exactly.
They've raised adult children now, and they have all of that. And sometimes back then life was simpler, so you didn't actually have to employ such complicated tactics to correct a behavior or correct a problem, of any kind in your child. And I think that we should, as new parents, be less dismissive. I think sometimes we feel like these opinions or this advice is antiquated and it doesn't apply anymore. And I think we should really be more, value it more. Be more open. I mean, it's like you said, the advice will come from many different directions. It's about you taking a step back and saying, is this right for me? And the value of the advice that comes from elders and parents and, even people in your social circle who are older than you, that has a lot of strength to it.
I can honestly say that it's easier for me to sit back and think about, watch a sermon and listen to what Hazuri Anwar has guided us, and to accept that as excellent advice. And, when somebody else in my social circle might say something, I'll sit back and question it, So it's a lot easier to do, but really think about it. Does this apply in my life? Is this effective? Is this good for me and my children?
I was mentioning that we would rather go to Google as opposed to turn to someone else, pick up the phone and ask somebody for advice. And part of the reason is our mentality, our mindset, where because we have so much pressure on being the best parent, I think that we feel that we will be opening up our vulnerability to others if we ask them, you know, that we don't know how to do this or do that, and it'll show people that we're not prepared, you know, and we're not the best parents, etc. Because everybody wants to do the best job that they can, right?
Exactly,
And I think that that's how the whole Google bit comes into play, is that we'd rather access our information from a non-judgmental entity.
That actually makes me think of two things. So, one, before you became a mother or a parent, what did you do to prepare yourself, right? So there is a lot that we can do to prepare ourselves. So, for example, taking a look at the Waqfino syllabus. If we take a look at it, we study it, we look at what our children, you know, are going to go through, inshallah, one day, what the milestones, I guess you could say, that we're hoping to achieve for them. So that's one thing, using that syllabus to prepare yourself, right, to think about it. Exactly, exactly. And then the other piece is, I mean, if you're going to go to Google and you're not sure because you don't want to ask around you, go to Al-Islam. Right? What resources are on there that can support you as a mother? There is a plethora of information there that you could filter through. And one, excellent book that kind of sticks out in my mind is The Way of the Seekers.
Yeah.
Right? Take the time. That's part of the studying phase. Take the time before you become a mother, even when you're a mother. If you didn't do it earlier, do it now. It's never too late, right, to learn. Yeah. So study the book, look at it. It's full of tips and tricks and ideas and, all the things that we need to know as mothers. And then the other thing is that once you've had your children, that syllabus, that Waqfino syllabus that I mentioned, for example, these are guides. They don't have to be exactly that. So at 2 years old, if my child doesn't know this, that's okay.
That's okay. But at least this is what I'm going to strive to
Exactly.
do. Maybe by age 3 I'll get there. Maybe by 4 I'll get there.
Exactly.
But these are goalposts and there is no judgment on it.
Personally for me as a mother, I look at those as a source of guidance and like inspiration. I feel like without these, without the syllabus, for example, I'd be lost.
There's no structure.
There's so much
then
I
you
want.
have the whole world open to you, and it's like, what do you
Exactly.
grab and where do you go?
Exactly.
And you actually end up confusing your child because you're so
Exactly.
confused because you're turning them in different directions every day.
Exactly.
So,
And it's a blessing.
yeah, absolutely.
So we should definitely use it.
Absolutely, a blessing. And then just to kind of conclude off of one point that you made, and you said, preparing ourselves as mothers. I think it's important to realize that parenting is a two-person job, right? It takes a village to raise a child.
Exactly.
But we have mothers and fathers because they should be sharing that responsibility of preparation, of implementing parenting skills and strategies and things like that. And when we learn to delegate, when we learn to coordinate, when we learn to communicate effectively, and we also should recognize that each one of us has some strengths and some weaknesses when it comes to parenting, right? Yeah. So if we were to supplement one another and cover each other's weaknesses and just really coordinate together, we become the most effective team as parents. And that leads to successful children, of course.
Exactly.
Jazakallah for the conversation.
Jazakallah.
Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Cut. That's a wrap for On Her Side.